Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
If you've watched the Fox television network or USA Network, if you've seen The Simpsons or Home Alone, if you've used Tinder or Angie, then you know just some of the work done under the watch of media mogul Barry Diller. At ABC in his early 20s, he became the youngest VP in network television history. And less than a decade later, Diller was put in charge of Paramount Pictures. After that, he co-founded Fox, and he took an early interest in the internet. Today, Barry Diller is in his 80s with a net worth of almost $6 billion. That's according to Bloomberg News. Diller is the chairman and senior executive of Expedia and the holding company IAC, which owns magazines, including People and Food and Wine, along with The Daily Beast, Care.com, and a significant stake in MGM Resorts. Now, Diller has published a memoir 15 years in the making called Who Knew? I sat down with him last week at IAC's headquarters in New York. Are you in a retrospective mood? You're 83 years old. Was that part of the mechanism as well?
No.
No.
No. And I thought, it's a good story. And the question was, and probably that thing that spurred me on was, could I tell it? And could I, if I did it, could I tell it true?
The book is full of stories about Hollywood A-listers, actors and directors, including Clint Eastwood, Warren Beatty, and Katharine Hepburn, and stories about deals Diller's done over the decades. But this is not a business book.
I'm not disrespectful to the people who do it, but I just didn't want to do a book that, quote, taught anybody anything or said, if you do these things in business or whatever, this is what will happen to you. I just thought it was a good tale.
Who Knew is mostly about Diller's career, but he also opens up about his personal life, about his 24-year marriage to the fashion designer Diane von Furstenberg, and, for the first time publicly, his identity as a gay man.
I did not lead a secret life. I just refused to make declarations. And I think that was a lack of courage. I wish I had had it. I didn't.
I'm David Gura, and this is The Big Take from Bloomberg News. Today on the show, my conversation with Barry Diller about his career, his life, and how, as an executive, he's navigating the uncertainty of President Trump's second term. Barry Diller grew up in Beverly Hills, the son of a real estate developer. Diller dropped out of college and started his career at the William Morris Agency. What was the magic of that place when you started out there?
Well, for me, since I never wanted to be an agent, it wasn't being an agent. It was that they had essentially the entire history of the entertainment business in one room, their file room. And so I manufactured my way into reading the file room.
If there's a through line in his career, it's chance of Diller being in the right place at the right time. He moved from William Morris to ABC in his early 20s. He was tasked with improving the network's movie library. He ended up creating what became a wildly successful franchise.
The Movie of the Week. Presenting the world premiere of an original motion picture produced especially for ABC.
ABC was the most junior of the networks. CBS and NBC had invented, basically, radio. So ABC was the tag-along when it entered television. So it was kind of the hip shooting. It would try anything just to get attention. And it was kind of run like a candy store, which is why they would give a 25-year-old immense responsibilities, because there was no bureaucracy to stop it. So it was a remarkable place.
As a young man, he was meeting executives and doing deals. It was a job, he says, he grabbed when nobody else was looking. Inherent in that is confidence or hubris. What made you able to do that, to put it together, to think you could do it and then assemble this?
I don't know that I'm not so sure I ever had confidence. I don't think I've ever had confidence.
Really?
Oh, yeah, sure. I think it's the lack of confidence that, at least in my case, made me somewhat effective. I think this is great good luck of anybody who kind of starts anything from, quote, zero, is you end up learning every job. I mean, until it gets to be of scale. But you learn every essential job You are the head of marketing. You are the head of sales. You are the head of affiliate relations. You are every task and also every creative aspect of it in the very beginning. If you do those things, you then know how to manage other people doing those things. Whereas if you come in at more senior levels, you only learn to manage top down rather than bottom up. And bottom up is the only thing that I think produces anything valuable.
Do you retain that level of engagement? In other words, do you want to be involved in everything all the time, or are you just content knowing what's happening all the time?
Once it becomes a success, I basically lose interest. So I'm not a good shepherd of things that have already kind of succeeded. I want to move on to the next challenge or to the next thing that I'm curious about or the next thing that's kind of unknown.
Which is how Diller made the leap from TV to movies. In 1974, he became the chairman and CEO of Paramount Pictures. During a decade there, he made movies with the likes of Robert Redford, John Travolta, George Lucas, and Steven Spielberg. And 2 decades later, his fascination with the commercial possibilities of the internet started when he was introduced to AOL. You, very early on, took an interest in the internet. What was it about it that sparked your interest, sparked your interest at the time? Pure curiosity.
Yeah. Well, I'd never seen a screen. I only knew screens from being used to tell stories. And I came upon screens that were very primitive in the early 90s, but they were interactive. In other words, you acted with something that you saw on a screen. Of course, I didn't know what was to become of it. I didn't know that in 3 years from then, there would be this thing called the internet that people would start to use. But that interactivity fascinated me.
Are you an inherently creative person?
No,
Do you consider yourself so?
Inherently creative? I never thought so. Certainly, I always had very strong opinions and instincts about things, particularly in entertainment. But I found that I was confident with my instincts, and passion in creative affairs is all that really matters. I mean, if you're a total dope, passionate about something stupid, is terrible. But if you're not that, then the difference between you and the other person is both your ability to be willful and the ability to argue creatively out of passion. And out of that kind of creative conflict comes some good things, also comes some big mistakes, but it's okay.
Is there a Barry Diller sensibility as you look back on all the places you've been? No, you just know it when you see it.
What there is, again, lucky, because in the range of people's interests, some people are interested in pigeons walking in Antarctica, or other abstruse kinds of things. I have kind of a mainstream sensibility, and I also have a guard against cynicism, and I want to hold on to naivete. And so those things put me kind of in a mainstream, broad mainstream, rather than on the outskirts of things. And that kind of often has resonance with larger numbers of people.
Let's talk a bit about data. And I gather you hate data.
I don't hate data. No, I don't hate it.
How do you use it, I guess, is a way into this?
I like it factually. What I don't like is anything that is supposedly predictive of future events.
Or of audience taste.
Based upon, certainly you can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the amounts that have been time wasted and spent in trying to divine what audiences will like and not like is this grandest waste of time.
Diller's career has centered on the silver screen, the small screen, and the internet. And I wanted to know what's exciting to him in business today.
I now am very much interested in things that cannot be disintermediated, which are places, travel. One of our companies is Expedia. I love travel, and travel, you cannot AI travel.
And post-COVID, you made a big bet that people would feel similarly.
Oh, yeah. And I like MGM resorts because those experiences, you can't get in the way of them.
After the break, Barry Diller on how he approaches business today and his perspective on the economy during President Trump's second term. Plus, his decision to open up in his memoir about his personal life and his identity as a gay man. These days, Barry Diller is the chairman and senior executive of IAC and Expedia. And like other business leaders, he's trying to navigate a challenging business environment. I asked him what he thinks about President Trump's trade policies in particular.
We're in a very unique moment of instability because of everything that has been shoved on the table by this administration. And will it work out or not? Now, I think the time limit for it either working out or not, particularly in trade, is very short, a few months. It'll either be pulled through or it will be an abject failure and be pulled back. So I think right now it's extremely difficult for people in business to make decisions that go beyond this period until they see what conditions are going to be. So it's an odd time. Listen, I'm willing to give the administration the time to pull it through without unduly trashing it or criticizing it. I doubt it'll work out, but I hope I'm wrong. I also hope that if I'm right, it just ends quickly. And if I'm wrong, hallelujah, everything's great.
Diller is paying close attention to how the private sector is dealing with Trump. The president hasn't been shy to call out some businesses and executives. Over the weekend, for instance, he told Walmart in a post on social media to, quote, eat the tariffs that are threatening the retailer's bottom line. Diller says he's also watching the FCC investigate TV networks and the FCC's scrutiny of the merger of Paramount, the owner of CBS, with Skydance Media. On Monday, the CEO of CBS News announced she's leaving the network, saying she and the company do not agree on the path forward.
Well, this too will pass in a few years, I would think. But politicizing the FCC, saying that broadcasters or people whose licenses the FCC holds should be subject to political determination as led by the chair of the FCC, delving into matters of suitability, that the FCC could actually say, we're going to scrutinize that to determine whether you should hold a broadcast license? That's heinous.
Do you have sympathy for Sherry Redstone as she tries to get this through?
Again, I'm amazed by this. I've been incredibly criticized for this because I said, look, if a guillotine is at your throat and it costs you $20 million or whatever to settle this lawsuit so that you can get out of going into bankruptcy or close to it, then I'm sympathetic to that if the guillotine is at your neck. So yes, I'm sympathetic to that. Contrast that with law firms. Law firms, the worst that could happen to them under what the administration was doing is they could lose a little business. No guillotine is at their throat. They will not be irrevocably harmed. For them to cave, that's bad. And for those that stood up and have said, go put sanctions on us, we'll survive. I'm totally respectful of them, and I would hope if I have some ability to direct things, I would never employ one of those law firms that essentially folded under these circumstances.
Unequivocally.
Absolutely.
Diller is known as someone who is not shy about saying what he thinks. But over the span of his life, there are things he hasn't addressed publicly.
You write about this contrast between you and your wife, that she's a public figure and her business is entirely wrapped up in that. And you've led a very public life in many ways, but you've been kind of assiduously private as well.
Yes, I like privacy, and I respect privacy in others, and for many reasons, partly because I actually like it as a quality, and partly because privacy protected me in things that I was fearful of. In contrast, my wife is her brand. And so her life has been, every aspect of it has been public since she's 20 years old. So she's utterly comfortable with it, and I'm utterly uncomfortable, but we'll see how it goes.
His memoir marks a shift from that privacy. In his book, he writes, "To my confused adolescent brain, being exposed as a homosexual meant the end of life as I knew it." And in another passage, quote, "When I was young, in the United States of the 1960s, I was far too afraid. I'm no longer that and too old to care."
We've talked a lot about your professional life, and I think to a T, as I've mentioned, I'm doing this interview, everyone's asked me, did you address your personal life in the book? Was that a dilemma or a debate for you as you wrote it?
Not at all. I mean, it's a debate today only because I'm so surprised. I am kind of surprised, kind of naive, that it seems to be kind of the, it's the catnip that the media pulls. And to me, it's not only a news story or whatever, because a lot of my life has never been a secret. But when I started writing it, I said the only way to do it is to tell the truth. So I had to tell my life. So I did. I've written the book, and I like what I've written.
Reading the book, I was struck how in your younger life, you almost didn't allow yourself to have a personal life. It was a thing that you had to, I think suppress is the wrong word, but you were so focused on your professional life.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who over-index in business, I mean, sacrifice isn't really, could be the word, but isn't really the word for me, but you don't have room. If you're working and obsessed with working, it crunches down to here the amount of time or interest you have in almost anything else.
There are a couple of moments in the book where you suggest that you could have said more about your private life sooner, and maybe that would have made a difference, and that you regret that. Do you feel that way?
Well, first of all, it's so many years later now, and no one, I think, other than media, I don't think anybody really cares about people's sexuality. But I think that, again, it's a long time ago, but I would have liked to have had more courage to make declarations. I did not lead a secret life. I just refused to make declarations. And I wish. And I think that was a lack of courage. I wish I had had it. I didn't.
This is The Big Take from Bloomberg News. I'm David Gura. This episode is produced by Naomi Shaven, our senior producer, and our deputy executive producer, Julia Weaver, with help from Simon Hampton. It was edited by Aaron Edwards and Chris Palmieri. It was fact-checked by our editorial team and mixed and sound designed by Alex Segura. Elizabeth Ponso is our senior editor. Nicole Beamster-Bohr is our executive producer. Sage Bauman is Bloomberg's head of podcasts. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe and review The Big Take wherever you get your podcasts. It helps people find the show. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.